Jungkook's secret message to Jimin after Jin's concert makes ARMY cry. That night, the air in the concert arena was still warmed by the cheers of thousands of ARMY who had just witnessed Jin's solo performance. The stage lights began to dim, but a sense of euphoria mixed with emotion still filled every corner of the room. Behind the stage, the crew is busy tidying up the equipment, while the members present hugged each other and congratulated Jin. Jin stood in the middle of the backstage, still wearing his last costume. His face soaked with sweat and a few tears that he didn't have time to wipe. He hugged Jungkook tightly, then Jimin. "Thank you for coming. You know, I really miss moments like this," she said quietly. His voice was hoarse yet warm. Jungkook, who is usually cheerful, looked more reserved that night. He patted Jin's shoulder, smiled a little, but his eyes held something, as if there was a feeling he wanted to express. But waiting for the right time. A few minutes later, in the middle of the backstage crowd, Jungkook briefly disappeared. No one knows where it went. Only 1 or 2 staff noticed when he returned with a bottle of water and a small towel. He walked slowly towards Jimin, who was sitting on a folding chair in the corner of the room, looking down while playing with his fingers. Without saying much, Jungkook thrusts the water. "Drink first," he said softly. Jimin lifted his face, smiled slightly, then accepted it. That's when Jungkook bowed slightly, drawing closer to Jimin's ear and whisper words that make time seem to stop. "I'm always here for you. Thank you for staying with me, despite everything heavy." Jimin was silent. His eyes glazed over, his lips quivering, yet he only nodded slowly. A gentle smile appeared on his face, and without realizing it, he patted Jungkook's hand, as if sending a wordless answer. The moment is brief, perhaps just a few seconds, but enough to make the heart of the beholder tremble. A staffer who watched it from afar admitted that he had to look away because he felt that the moment was too personal, too sincere to be witnessed by foreign eyes. After that, the two just sat side by side in silence. No long conversations, no dramatic gestures, only warm silence, in which words are no longer needed. The presence of each other is enough to make everything feel lighter. For the ARMY who later heard this story, their tears fell not because of the great drama or poetic words, but because of the simplicity and sincerity of the moment. Behind the scenes and the world of entertainment, Jungkook and Jimin are still two humans who find each other's strength. As soon as Jungkook said the phrase, "I'm always here for you," Jimin seemed to be dragged back to the memories of the past. A few years earlier, when they were still in the thick of promotion, there was a period where the mental and physical pressure felt almost unbearable. Jimin once had days where he didn't want to get out of his hotel room while on tour, feeling all his energy and motivation gone. Jungkook, who was still very young, somehow always found a way to break through the walls Jimin built. It does not come with motivational speeches or lengthy advice. He just sat on the floor, leaning against the wall of Jimin's room, brought 2 cups of warm coffee, then said quietly, "I'm not going to force you to tell me, but I'm going to sit here until you feel less alone." It was simple, but for Jimin, who at the time felt like he was isolated from everyone, Jungkook's presence was an anchor that kept him from sinking deeper. From there was born an unshakable trust between them, a belief that in a storm of any magnitude, they will be the only ones who remain standing next to each other. Now, years later, when a similar phrase came out of Jungkook's mouth again in the backstage crowd, Jimin knew it wasn't just any small talk or sweet talk. It is a promise that has been proven in the past, and it is likely that it will continue to hold in the future. That night, after everyone began to disperse, the two of them walked towards the side exit of the arena, accompanied only by a few staff. The night air greeted coldly, but for some reason, the warmth in their hearts overpowered everything. Jimin looked briefly at Jungkook. "You know, I'll always be there for you too," he said softly, almost like a murmur. Jungkook turned his head, looked into Jimin's eyes, then smiled faintly. "I know," he answered briefly, but confidently. They don't need a big hug or audience applause. Their relationship is built on small moments like this, moments that are not captured on camera, but are forever captured in their hearts. Okay, I'll continue with the emotional epilogue, where we will get into a private moment that ARMY has never seen. There is only between Jimin and Jungkook. A few days after Jin's concert, Jimin sat alone in his hotel room. It was almost midnight, but his eyes weren't closed. On his desk is a cup of tea that has cooled down, and his phone opens with a blank screen in the memo app. He took a deep breath, then started typing. Unlike the messages he usually sends to Jungkook via chat, this time he chose to write it in a memo, something he might send later, or maybe not at all. Kuka, I don't know if you realize it or not, but every time you say, "I'm always there for you," it feels like I have a place to go home. I once felt alone in a crowd of thousands, and you changed that. You held me when I almost fell. You taught me that love and friendship don't always have to be shown in big words, but through consistent presence. Thank you, not only because you were there when I needed you, but because you made me want to be someone you could also count on. Maybe we won't always be in the same place, but I want you to know, I will always find a way to get back by your side, whatever happens. Jimin reread his writings several times. There was a slight feeling of warmth in his chest, mixed with nervousness, as he wasn't sure if those words were too honest. But in the end, he pressed the send button to Jungkook. A few minutes later, his phone vibrated. Jungkook's short reply, but Jimin could imagine the look on his face as he wrote it. I read this with a smile. Me too. Always. No exaggerated punctuation, no emoji, but it was enough to make Jimin smile broadly before closing his eyes that night. Out there, thousands of ARMY might just see the magnificent stage and cheers, but behind the scenes, there are two hearts that take care of each other in a way that they never hype. For Jimin and Jungkook, their friendship is a song that is not always sung in public, and yet always live among them, from one heart to another. A few weeks after Jin's concert and the secret message moment, BTS attended a public event featuring all the members, including Jimin and Jungkook. For the ARMY, this was one of those rare moments because they hadn't seen all the members standing on one stage in a long time. The show runs normally in the eyes of ordinary viewers, but not for the ARMY, who is always observant to pay attention to the movements of the members. In the middle of the interview, the camera caught Jungkook glancing at Jimin with a slight smile that was different from usual, a smile that seemed to hold something. Jimin, who was listening to the host, turned his head and returned the smile with a warm look, then refocused. For those who don't know, it may seem like an ordinary interaction, but ARMY, who understood the pattern of the two, began to fill social media with pieces of the video. Many said it must be about the secret message of Jin's concert time, or their gaze is like that of a person who has his own story. After the show was over, the two of them walked out together towards the car. The lights of the media cameras kept on, but their pace was leisurely, as if they were used to it. Jungkook had spoken slowly near Jimin's ear, making his Hyung laugh a little while looking down. No one knew what Jungkook had said, but that moment was enough to make ARMY's heart flutter again. In the car on the way home, Jungkook sees Jimin asleep in the seat next to him. The night streets of Seoul sparkle with city lights running through the windows. Jungkook pulled out his phone, opened the memo, and began typing a long reply to the message Jimin used to send. This time he didn't send it right away. Hyung, I want you to know that I read your message many times. I've never said this before, but I've also felt empty in a crowd. You are the one who keeps me strong. We may have a busy and stressful world, but every time I see you, I feel like I have another reason to hold on. I don't know what the future will be like, but I know one thing, I will still be here, by your side. Jungkook kept the message, looked at Jimin for a while, then smiled slightly. He knows, whether sent or not, the words he will always show through action. For both of them, it's not about how often they say, I care, but how often do they prove it on stage, backstage, or even in meaningful silence. And for the ARMY to realize, the secret message wasn't just for one person. In the way they take care of each other, ARMY can feel the same love, a love that makes everyone feel, at least once in his life, that there is someone who will always be by his side.